Welcome, everybody, to the Silver Screen Action Figure Podcast, and we're back in our audio form for a very special episode that I've been waiting all year to do. And this particular episode, I had to bring in some big guns. So, once again, I'm bringing in my co host that you probably remember from the Terminator and Power Rangers episodes, as well as our Star Wars roundtable. Mr. Jesse Jobin. This is the one I've been waiting to do all year. I was hoping to do it back in March to commemorate the anniversary of this particular movie, but we're getting to the end of the summer. Everybody's still in the festive mood, so here we are today talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And basically, we're going to be talking about the movies, the figures that came along, and the figures that we just got now recently, which have really sparked some new interest in the phenomenon that we all grew up on. So I guess I'll start for myself with how I got into turtles from the beginning. As far back as I remember, I think it was about 1989, and I remember seeing commercials for the cartoon on WPIX 11, and I just at that time I was still into Ghostbusters. Batman was just about to come out, and obviously that was going to be the big phenomenon. But I remember seeing these commercials for this thing, Ninja Turtles, at my grandpa's house after school one day. And I decided, Saturday afternoons, I mean, not Saturday afternoons, but just like weekday afternoons, it was constantly playing. So let me check this thing out. I didn't know at the time it had already been on for about 2 years. And right away, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the personality of the turtles or if it was the animation or the villains, but something hooked me into it. And then I saw my friends in school, and one of my friends who recently passed away, he got into it. And they were having pizza parties and buying the bandanas, and then the next thing became the action figures. And Playmates was putting these figures out, and I started collecting them. I had Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael, Splinter, Shredder, and little by little, as they kept putting out more figures, I kept getting more of them, and suddenly the Ghostbusters went on the shelf back in a box, and Turtles became my whole new thing. And the video game became a phenomenon all the way up to the original movies. So I was one of those kids who had like Michelangelo come to my birthday party, so I dressed in a Michelangelo suit. And yeah, I mean, it just, when I talk about it, it just makes me feel happy because I remember that was like the happiest time of my life. Like, even remembering when my grandpa got me the Turtles 2 arcade game for the Nintendo for Christmas. And I remember playing that all day. And that's like one of the fondest memories that I remember about him. And just overall, it was a phenomenon for me as a kid, and I can't really think of my childhood without it. So, Jesse, I know you've also had a pretty extensive history with it, so share your thoughts of how you got into Turtles.
If memory serves me correct, I believe the cartoon came out first before the films. They were very bright and colorful. They had a lot of crazy characters, and each turtle has their own personality, and usually you'd pick your favorite that you relate to the most. Um, so as the cartoon went on, it would seem like it was more just to sell merchandise. But even as an adult today, I mean, I still enjoy everything Turtles. Turtles is still going. They even have a current series on Nickelodeon. But as an adult, I find myself more interested in and attracted to the 90s movies. At one time, it was like the highest grossing independent movie ever made. That first one in 1990, I believe.
Yeah, let's jump into the 1990 movie because I remember that very vividly. That was back in March 1990 when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, came out. And the thing I remember was when the trailer first hit. I don't remember the movie it was with. It might have been Back to the Future Part 2. And it was so cool to see, like, the mystery around the turtles. Like when you see the shot of the shells popping out in the water and the sewer hatch blowing up, and you were getting hyped up, and then finally you see the turtles on the big screen, and it was like, oh my god, they actually able to pull this off. And They looked so lifelike. They were exactly the same personalities as what I saw in the cartoon, seeing Splinter. And then when I saw that movie, I remember seeing that at the United Artists with my parents and my cousin, and we were just blown away. The audience was so into film every moment. Even when Casey Jones came on screen, people went nuts. And every little thing about it, I mean, I look back at that film now, and we're definitely going to get into the sequels for sure, but I just felt in watching it later as an adult, and I've seen a lot of different independent films, and I've seen, big blockbusters that have obviously taken it to another level, but man, still to this day holds up because it took the source material of the original comic book, which was already kind of on the dark side, but they didn't make it so dark to where it was more for adults. They still kept those little touches with keeping the bandanas multicolored and the personalities were still intact. And like everything about the music, the lighting, the cinematography, even the Jim Henson work that they did to bring those guys to life. I still think, for a long time, it was like the highest grossing independent film for years. I forget what movie actually topped it, but I still think it holds up to this day. And even the other day when you showed me like that footage from that new Turtles game, or I think it's like test footage for it, and they played the movie music, I got really into it. I was like, yeah, I kind of want to.
Yeah, I would even say, because before you invited me on here, I had recently rewatched all the movies just because I usually do that like once or twice a year, watch all the Turtles movies. But I would say the first one is probably my favorite over Secret of the Ooze. Even though people hold that one in high regard, but I think that's more because that's a little more cartoony, and it had like, Vanilla Ice in it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I would actually say that the Partners in Crime song is better than Go Go Ninja Go.
Yes. Yeah, that played like all that summer.
Turtle Power.
Yes, the Turtle Power theme played every radio station. All of MTV was playing that music video, and like even when me and my friends saw the reboot back in 2014, we put together like our video review. We actually used that as the song to play in the background as we were like going to the theater and then coming out, and that kind of like really threw me back. That was the other thing too, was just every little thing about the first film between, Elias Koteas playing Casey Jones, like he brought that guy to life. Judith Hogue playing April O'Neil. She wasn't like the ideal choice, like somebody that I would think in my head, who could play April O'Neil, but she was really good, and she brought a level of reality into the role. You had an unknown Sam Rockwell playing one of the that gets recruited by the Foot Clan, and that was another thing about the first movie that I liked, was that it touched on themes and, the fact that the Turtles were, separated from Splinter, their homes destroyed, they're trying to find themselves, Raphael getting thrown through the window, and he's for a good part of the movie. This was heavy stuff back then. Being that Batman came out the year before, it was like those films, they took that very seriously, and I still give them props for what they did. As much as the reboot make it more like the cartoon and trying to throw us everything we wanted, I think I appreciate it more now that they kept the original movie more grounded.
Well, like you said earlier about Jim Henson doing the costumes and such, and obviously it being a much darker version than like let's say the cartoon, when you look back at like the original Turtle comics, I believe the first book in the series, they were to have Shredder kill him. That was what they were intended to do, because if you remember, at the end of the day, they are ninjas. They follow a certain code, if you will. Like, I guess that's why overseas they're known as Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Right.
Because it's such a, fine line to tread on. But, that movie it's so awesome. And let's step away from what Henson did with the turtle costumes and also look at what he did if he was part of the villain costumes. Because I think the foot soldier costumes are awesome.
Oh yeah.
And Shredder is awesome as well. And it only got better in the second movie, but I mean, if you're thinking of like ninjas and like Japan, like they hit the nail on the head with all of that. Even the like the elbow and knee pads that the turtles wear, like it looked like a old leather almost.
Yeah, and also the Splinter design was something that I really felt they got the right in that first film. I know Clash had his issues later on, but when I thought about Splinter, there's the animated version, but I always think of that performance because he brought some reality to it, and the design made him like a worthy father figure. Like, this is somebody that, yeah, he's a rat. Everybody gets freaked out in the beginning, but then it's very quickly you fall in love with him. He just looks sympathetic and caring and what you want in somebody to look up to. And you know what? We're going to talk about the third movie later, but I really felt like they dropped the ball on Splinter by the third when they changed the voice. It just wasn't the same.
Yeah, I didn't want to cut you off. I was just thinking the same thing. When they get to the third movie, he kind of looks like I guess like a really bad Sesame Street puppet. And even if well, just my opinion, but if you jump into the reboot from, what was it, 2016, I believe?
Yeah, well, 2014 is when the first one came.
The Tony Shalhoub one, that one he just looked like a wet rat.
Yeah, he looked too samey in that one.
Yeah, I wasn't really feeling that version. I mean, I enjoyed the movies, but I don't know, that CGI one was weird.
Yeah, we'll get a little bit into that one in a bit. But going back to Turtles 2, which came out a year after the first one, like you said, it definitely went more into a kid-friendly direction because for as much as the first film drew huge numbers, I think it was in the top 5 highest-grossing movies in 1990 before Home Alone came along, parents still complained that the first movie was too dark. And so they tried to pull back on the use of the weapons. They tried to inject more of the feels of the cartoon. And that played in part of bringing in the characters of Toka and Razor. Because as kids, I remember going to the city and seeing the posters on the subway where it's the turtles finding the canister of the ooze, and then you see these two silhouettes in the background. I thought it was Bebop and Rocksteady. And so I was a little disappointed once the trailers hit and they showed that it was like these two new creatures. But it's like, okay, well, it's still like a new formidable opponent. It's still Shredder in the mix. So I'm going to enjoy it for what it is. And I did. But it definitely doesn't hold a candle to the original. And it's not until years later when I found out that Eastman and Lard, the creators of Turtles, they were kind of against using more of the cartoon element, so that's why we didn't get Bebop, Rocksteady, Krang, or the Rat King, or Baxter Stockman in any of these movies. And it's still alternate versions of them that, like even the David Warner playing the TGRI scientist, I thought it was Baxter Stockman when I was a kid, but instead he was sort of like a placeholder for it. And supposedly there was even an ending planned where it was going to turn out that the ooze was alien made and his character was going to have his chest open and an alien's supposed to pop. It's not supposed to be Krang, but they nixed it because everybody thought, well, they see that, they're going to automatically think Krang, so they dropped that. I mean, yeah, there are those things I wish done, but still, it's enjoyable for what it is. I thought Ernie Reyes playing Keno was kind of seeing him get into action, and they definitely tried to pull back on, which was the only downside, but still a little bit of a fun film.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, even to this day, is like kind of disappointed we never got like that version of Bebop and Rocksteady, or any of the other more familiar villains or characters. But Toka and Razar, they were what they were. It was an interesting concept. They still got it out there, like the whole mutation process. They explained all that and everything. So, yeah, I think everybody probably thought that was supposed to be Baxter.
Yeah.
That's one thing I would say that either the newer movies got right, or they knew by adding all these characters we never got in those movies would draw like the older fans in, with like Bebop, Rocksteady, Baxter, all those guys crying. So you even get a glimpse of like what's supposed to be the Technodrome. So yeah, I still wish we would have got a Bebop and Rocksteady back then, though. That would have been cool.
Yeah, I agree. If they had more money involved, I think they could have made that possible. But, hey, I still remember the movie fondly, remember seeing it, and I don't think it's the worst in the series. But this, as I said, this was the one that was starting to make it more kid-friendly to meet standards with the animated series. So at that point, Playmates decided they didn't make figures for the first movie, so let's make it for this one. And that's when we got the movie star line, which was basically taking the turtles from the film in their designs and putting them into action figure form. And I think I remember the commercial. It was actors playing the turtles from the movie getting interviewed on like some Oprah type of show, and it was kind of like this funny thing, like, oh wow, we got these new turtle figures straight from the film. And I never collected these because there were already so many turtle figures at that point that why do I need another Leonardo, Donatello, and so forth? Because that was the one criticism about the line, was they were always trying to find a new way to add a gimmick to every character. But nonetheless, I know people who had them, so I did get to play with some of them. And basically, it's the same exact characters, but they look like what they were in the film. They have more of a rubbery, like a soft rubbery kind of feel, and more joint movement, unlike the original assortment that came out in 1988. One criticism that I have is that they do smile a little bit too much. They're a little bit creepy. And I also think that when you don't have the lighting of those two movies, the costumes look realistic. It starts to look more like the way they did in the third film. I mean, that they go overdoing it with the dust and making it look more rubbery than they actually were supposed to.
Well, I would say they're a lot of bit creepy. But like you said, the skin is supposed to be like a rubber, which I think it's supposed to make it look almost like scaly, like a reptilian.
Right.
And the paint job that they put on there, where they all have like their own spots or whatever, like a real turtle would. The biggest problem I have with that particular line is face.
Yes. He smiles too hard.
Leonardo would not only never make that face, that face should probably be switched with Michelangelo.
I agree.
Because Michelangelo, I believe, is the only one in the line that has his mouth closed. And he's supposed to be the party dude.
Right.
He would be the one smiling, cheesing like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, and then also they tried to make it similar with the first line of figures by having different shades of green for each character, which, if I remember the movies correctly, they all pretty much wore the same design minus their bandanas. So that was to be expected because it was the 90s and they kind of knew how to make each character look different and unique. But it's still a little odd to look at.
I think what they tried to do with that is they tried to take the color scheme from like some of the cartoon artwork that we saw like back in the day, where they all had like a different color skin. But if you look at the movie star line of Turtles, if they're supposed to be based off the movie, they shouldn't have color elbow and knee pads, because in the movie they're all brown.
Right.
So I think that was still more of a, they're trying to base some of it more off of the cartoons as well, not just the movie, even though it's called the movie line.
those, and then that was 1991 when they came out. So I think they came out a couple of months after the movie was released. And then the next line I'm trying to pull up now. In this line, like I said, Toka and Razor look exactly like they did in the movie. I think they kind of made their skin, unlike in the film. Again, it was a little realistic in their environments and the way that the movie was shot. Because I think Toka looks a little too brown than the way he did. He looked like a darker shade of brown in the movie. And Razor looks a lot like the Slash character from Turtles, but just more creepier and not as cool looking.
So, in that particular line, there are actually two versions of Toka. There's a brown one and then there's a gray one. So that might be a paint issue or what that got, and some of them got released. But that's maybe the one you got was a little different than the other. It's kind of weird. Like, those were the only ones you got from the Secret of the Ooze, besides Super Shredder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you didn't really get anybody like we didn't get new versions of or like the new April, because Judith Hoag was
right.
The one.
They replaced her with,
or even I don't recall if the scientist even got a figure.
No, he didn't.
Or even Kino.
Or Vanilla Ice. Well, he got a doll.
I mean,
yeah.
that would have. That they could have done that, I guess, if the money was right. But actually, now that you mention it, I think NECA should release a Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, it's overdue. We need a Vanilla Ice toy if NECA is listening. I'll call Judith Hoag and tell her, could you ask NECA to make a Vanilla Ice figure from Turtles 2? But yeah.
But I mean, that Super Shredder that came out in that line, size of the other toys.
Oh, I agree.
Like, that's big, sexy Kevin Nash. What the hell, bro?
Yeah, that's what Eddie, before he became Big Daddy Cool Diesel. I mean, they overdo it with the shoulder pads and the helmet, but that, to me, I mean, look, they had the Dick Tracy toys a year before, so I understand, everybody was sort of the same size. There's only so much you could do with the scale of the figures, but come on. Super Shredder should have been like a big deluxe figure compared to the regular Shredder that we got. In fact, I don't even think we got a regular movie Shredder the whole time that they did this. If I'm wrong, somebody send me the picture, because I'll certainly post it here.
No, I think Shredder that was that weird one that kind of looked like he was in a three-point stance.
Right.
I don't think he had a shirt on. I think that was the only one. We never got the one from the movie.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the truth. I was a little disappointed with that particular Shredder figure. As much as I still play with it, but I lost the cape and I lost the undergarment that he wore. I wanted one that looked kind of big and tall, like what James Avery did the voice for. But it just, again, I don't think they expected for the cartoon to be as big of a deal as it was, and Playmates had to adjust over time with every character, because later on, more driven by the cartoon than the comic book line. And then before we get into Turtles 3, there actually is one more figure that came out, weirdly enough. They put it out in another 1992 line, and that was the Foot Soldier figure and Splinter. So these came along really at a very weird point in Turtles, when I think they were really overdoing it with the villains and the creatures, and I think there were 3 different April figures they made. But we got a Foot Soldier figure, just like the Foot Soldier you saw in the movie, and I think it looks pretty dead accurate. It's got the red bandana, it's all grayed out. I don't know what it came with, but buy a whole bunch of those. I think they look just as good as the Foot Soldier figures that we got from the first set of figures. The Splinter, I've never seen the Splinter figure in the store ever, but the thing that they did here was they actually gave him real fur, and the same gi that he wears in the film. They got that correct. I mean, this looks like the that Mothman looking guy from Masters of the Universe, and Splinter probably looks a little too cute, but nonetheless, we were able to get that. But like I said, I don't think I saw that much in the store. Maybe because at that point I was starting to move on from Turtles, and you didn't really see those kind of figures as some of the others.
Yeah, I think about around this particular time, I think I was starting to really from Turtles so much, but like, I guess there were just other things on television as I was getting older that I started to get into more. I believe around the same time Street Fighter 2 came out, I was heavy into that.
Yeah.
So like the toy collecting, I didn't really get into the toy collecting until Power Rangers started releasing stuff like about a year or two later. But like I had mentioned before, I would almost even argue that the Foot Soldier from that line is the best looking of all the figures from the Secret of the Ooze.
Yes.
Only because, like I said before, the costumes in the movie are like really fucking cool. Like they look like ninjas, like straight out of Japan.
Right. And then also during that period,
Yeah, the Splinter though, like you said, I don't know if it was like a release issue, but like the only one I really remember was the one with the purple gi from the cartoon. Not really so much that one. I believe he had a white robe.
yeah. Yeah, they. I still. That was the only Splinter figure that I got, and I still have it in a box somewhere. And then also, right around the same time, now you remember they had the big size turtle figures, like the dolls, and I had a Leonardo, and I think I had a Donatello version or Michelangelo. But they also made those same scale figures for the movie as well. So they was the same toys, but now they have the movie shape. So I could definitely say for a fact I never saw those in a store, and I don't know anybody who ever had them. But nonetheless, that was also adding to the movie collection. So now,
I don't know that they all got a giant size release though for the movie. I think maybe Leonardo and Raphael.
well,
I don't think all four of them got a release though.
that has all four of them together. It's very possible that only one or two came out and then the others didn't, because sometimes you'll go into a store and maybe only see one set of turtles, like just maybe a Michelangelo and a whole assortment of them, but you wouldn't see any of the other characters. So that was kind of like a common thing that I would notice in like a Toys R Us or a KB. And just like with the regular movie star figures, it's the same issue, but I think it's a little bit worse, where you have a hugely smiling Leonardo, and the black and yellow dots are so noticeable and so overlarge. I mean, it's almost like they obscure their faces. It's really bad on Donatello, to the point where they look like chicken pox than like real rubbery turtle skin. So now we're going to jump into 93, and that's when we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. So just to kind of give context, because we touched on it just a little bit. So 1993, I could definitely say for a fact that I was not into Turtles anymore. I still played the games. I remember playing Turtles in Time with my cousin and beating that like 2 or 3 times, playing it in the arcade. There was the Manhattan Project on Nintendo. So there were still some Turtle things that I was kind of into, but at that point, I mean, Batman the Animated Series came out, so now there were a whole new set of figures for that. X-Men hit the small screen, and everybody was in the Marvel kick, and that was pretty much my thing, going for the Marvel trading cards and so forth. In the UK, people were big into WWE. After SummerSlam 92, there was this huge craze over there, which is probably why Bret Hart became the champion at the end of the year. So really, all these new trends were happening, and then a year later we would get Power Rangers. So in that middle period, people were just kind of getting tired because they couldn't keep collecting the same four figures, and the cartoon was getting stale. You know, Michelangelo wasn't using his nunchucks anymore, so people were kind of getting tired of it. But for a movie where they send the turtles to ancient Japan through a time scepter, where they have to go and they have to rescue April from like this evil Japanese dictator and this English pirate. And that was the one thing that I remember a lot of fans getting pissed off about, was the fact that, you know, you don't have Shredder in it. We understand you killed him off at the end of 2, but fans wanted to see the Rat King, to see Baxter Stockman. They wanted to see Krang and every other character and villain from the cartoon and the comic. And instead, we got the bad guy from Lethal Weapon 3 playing, you know, some English pirate who thinks they're demons and wants to blow them up with a cannon. I'll say this. I saw the movie when it came out, and I remember kind of liking it. You know, hey, Casey Jones, everybody went wild in the theater. But then it just, I understand they were trying to go back to the roots of the first film. It has a much more serious tone. You know, this feuding family thing going on. And Michelangelo kind of falls in love with the Japanese princess. Raphael relates to this kid that has anger issues. But you tell the quality dropped off just by the fact that they didn't hire Jim Henson's company to do the effects again. So the quality of the suits is deteriorated to really bad animatronics, and just the direction of it wasn't so great, because now you could really fake the skin looked by the way that the scenes were in the daytime, and just there wasn't a whole lot of excitement. Yes, there's some fun moments, some funny bits. They brought back Corey Feldman as the voice of Donatello, but I just remember, like, even towards the end, kind of like almost falling asleep on it. You know, I was pretty much done with Turtles and ready to move on at that point.
I know I had messaged you not too long ago about Turtles in Time, the movie, and I didn't hate the movie. I just think that because it was missing all these, you know, characters and villains, that people weren't really into it. And obviously, like you said, the costumes are just, it's very noticeable that they're different. And I feel like that took away from the movie a lot, even though most of the time they're all wearing like samurai gear. I did think it was like Elias Koteas played a dual role in the movie.
Yeah.
Because we got a figure, other character he plays in the toilet. So that's kind of cool, I guess. Yeah, well, you know, obviously, like, when people think about that movie, like, probably their least favorite of the original. And I can't recall offhand if the Super Nintendo Turtles in Time came out before or around the same time as that movie. But, like, when you say Turtles in Time, you think of that game, and that game's, like, holy grail as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
So, you know, if people go into the movie and what they played in that game, they're going to be highly disappointed.
Yeah, I think that the game came out about a year or 2 years before 3, so I think that there was maybe been some issue behind that, but certainly, you know, not enough to bring back the villains that we wanted to see, which probably would have made it much more interesting to watch. But yeah, we got a whole bunch of figures for the third movie, which is kind of shocking, given that I'm sure sales were declining by that time. And I could say for a fact that when those figures hit, KB Toy Store in the area where Burlington Co-Factory is on Stone Island, now it's a Chuck E. Cheese, they had all these figures on a disc, and I just swept them up because they were just literally giving them away. In this set, you got the movie Turtles again, but they're all in the samurai gear. There's no change as far as the heads are concerned. I think maybe the Leonardo smiles a lot less, and actually the Michelangelo smiles the way that the movie line previously looks. So it's kind of, you kind of listen to your idea at that point rather than to do it for the second movie. I mean, they're okay. They're nicely designed. Again, they go overdoing it on the multicolored look of each character. I remember the costumes being much more muted in their colors in the film. But nonetheless, I mean, this was just to appeal to kids, and so they were going to try to make them pop. And then you got a whole wide variety of human figures. We got an April figure for the first time in movie form, the one that Paige Taruko played. And, I mean, she probably looks more like the cartoon April in terms of her facial features, but they get her hair right, they get the outfit correct. You got the Walker character, who's the villain in the film, and he just looks like an English pirate. I remember he came with a gun. I think he had like a little cannon with him. He looks cool, but if you were to pick this figure out and you would not know that it was for Ninja Turtles. That's one thing that certainly stands out about this movie. It's like, how do you know who's who? Princess Mitsu, who... the princess in the movie that was leading this rebellion. She was the one that Michelangelo kind of gets attracted to, but does further for obvious reasons. There was Kenshin. He was the samurai warrior who switches places with April when she uses the time scepter. And he only has like maybe one action scene at the beginning of the movie. The rest of it, it's him and those other 4 guards that get replaced by the Turtles, just goofing around, and he's all concerned because he misses the princess. I don't even know why they even made this guy. I mean, it's just kind of a waste of me. And then we got another Splinter with a different type of cloth that he wears. It's just a recycled version of the figure from the movie star line. And then the Warlord figure, who I think was the other main bad guy in the movie. It was like that old dude. I mean, again, getting like the Japanese aesthetic looks great. I can't complain about the design, but they almost feel like they could be out of a completely different toy line, and you wouldn't think that it came from Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, there were a few other ones that were in that line too, just generic villain saddle horses.
Yes.
I don't even... as I mentioned before, you also get Elias Koteas' other character, Wit, and he came with like a catapult. Also from this line, you also got the giant-sized turtles, but I don't think all of them released again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely say for a fact that these definitely did not
sell. And then there were like a few play sets, like costumes.
Right, the things are for the kids to wear, right?
Yeah, they came with like weapons and bandanas and such.
Yeah, they were like sort of like these role-playing things for kids to wear, which way back at the start of the line, so I guess they were all added to the films as well. But yeah, I mean, at that point, I could definitely say for a fact nobody was really buying Turtles anymore. And I think, also, just before we move on from this, it shocks me that we never got a Sato figure. I think there are also those little missed opportunities. You make all these human figures for the third film of characters nobody cares about, but there were so many other cool characters you could have done from the first 2 movies that Playmates could have caught up on. They could have Irish-looking movie. He could have had a figure. They could have made April's boss, who was not Vernon or that fat dude from Channel 6 News. There's a lot of stuff that certainly could have added. Casey Jones had a van, which I remember as a kid, everybody thought that was going to turn into the Turtles party van. They could have done stuff like that, and I think it really would have made the line more interesting. But, it was always about the Turtles themselves, and I guess it was just sort of like a missed opportunity for that period.
Necessarily toys, but I do remember from the 90s, I believe it had like candy in it, but they were like the Turtles from the movie, but they were all set in like a certain pose. I don't know if you remember those.
I think I do, but I would have to picture again, and it would jog my memory.
Yeah, I'll look them up. If I find it, I'll send it to you. But I definitely remember collecting those.
Yeah, so real quick on Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. So after the third film came out,
I found it.
Okay. So after Turtles 3 was released, basically that was it for the film franchise for quite a while. There were plans to do a fourth film, which would have involved the turtle to their next step in evolution, and there was a fifth turtle that was going to be introduced as a potential villain. And if you go and you do a Google search, there actually are conceptual designs for this film, but of course, this was around 94, 95. Nobody was into Turtles anymore, so the movie was scrapped. Producers of Turtles and Playmates all thought, we think there's still money in it, and we don't want to lose this license. So with the popularity of Power Rangers on TV, they decided, well, if we're not going to make any more movies, why not do a live-action television series? At that point, the cartoon was off the air, and we got Ninja Turtles Next Mutation, which was just essentially, I think it was in the continuity of the movies, but you could tell if you ever saw clips of it online, the designs, the costumes are hugely inferior even to the ones from the third movie. You could tell this was done on a Power Rangers level budget, and probably the most kid thing about it was the fact that they did bring in a fifth turtle, and it would be a female, Venus de Milo, and that's the only thing I remember about it. I just remember seeing these commercials and thinking, this looks like an abortion. I could care for it. And even at that time, I was done with Power Rangers, but this just reeked of desperation to me. And the figures themselves...
Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, the figures themselves just look like they were so embarrassed by this show, they might as well make it look like the old Turtle toys. It's really... I have nothing to say about it because, honestly, it just was like the end of an era right there.
Trying to put a stranglehold on every franchise he could get his hands on at the time. Because not only did he have Power Rangers, but he also had, like, Big Bad Beetleborgs and Masked Rider, and, now he has his name on this. So, but, again... Ninja Turtles is kind of timeless, so for somebody who was younger than us at that time, that might be their introduction into Ninja Turtles, so they won't know any better. Like, they have nothing to compare it to, because they've probably never been introduced to any of the 90s or 80s stuff. As far as, like, Venus went, like, I thought she got a lot of hate for no reason, really. I thought it was cool that they introduced the female turtle, especially if you come, take your time machine and travel to right now. Like, Jenica is a female turtle that they have in the comic books right now, who's like a total badass. I don't know if we'll probably get a figure of her eventually, but yeah, or whatever. Nothing really to go crazy about. Yeah, I think we should just move on.
Okay.
I mean, Raphael and his motorcycle is kind of cool, but that's about it from me on that.
Yeah. So now we're going to get into the 2007 animated Ninja Turtles movie, but just to kind of after Next Mutation, really there was like a dry spell for a couple of years, and then around 2003 there was a new Ninja Turtles cartoon with a completely new look, more buffer, more adult-like, and I didn't watch it because at that point I was already off to college, but I remember seeing a little bit of it on TV and thinking, this is actually not too bad. And I had friends with their kids that really started to get into Turtles at that particular point, so I thought it was kind of cool that they were bringing it back for a whole new audience, and it sort of led to this 2007 movie, which I honestly think is highly underrated. I remember seeing footage of it at New York Comic, and there was also the video game tie-in, so I remember me and my friends Dennis and Sal, and of course Albert, we all played it. It was almost like Grand Theft Auto, but done like the old Turtles arcade game. It was kind of fun. And while I didn't see the movie in the theaters, I saw it when it came out on video, and I gotta say, I was impressed with this. I was impressed because, first of all, this was almost like the fourth movie. In fact, in a way it was, because there is this subtle reference to the three, and the scene where you see like the Shredder helmet, the TGRI tube, and even the Time Scepter in one scene. And it was kind of cool how the Turtles were all kind of like gone their separate ways, and then something happens, they're all kind of brought back together. You don't have Shredder as the bad guy, you have like these alien creatures from another dimension. A couple of celebrity voices were. Sarah Michelle Gellar played the voice of April O'Neil. Chris Evans, prior to Captain America, played Casey Jones. And Akko, the famous Japanese actor who had passed away right after completing his work on the movie, he played the voice of Splinter. And Patrick Stewart, I played the voice of the villain in the film. So I gotta say, like, even though cartoons now are not as for me as they were when I was younger, this one I think really impressed me. And I'm shocked they didn't do any more with it after, because I thought they did a very impressive job keeping the personalities intact, having the fun of the cartoon and the comic book, and just overall, I think the quality was pretty well done. And I like looking at these figures right now. They still have the different shades of green going on, but they look just like what they had in the movie. And I know my friends, their kids had these as well. So I had nothing but good things to say here as far as the 2007 movie.
Yeah, I think most people agree that TMNT, the 2007 movie, overall was pretty good, even though it was all animated. Like you said, there were a lot of notable names that were part of the voice cast. I believe this is the first time we get to see Karai out of the comic books.
Mm-hmm.
On the big screen. I know, like, the movie is its own thing, but, like, they put, like, some kind of, like, variants on there of, like they have a Michelangelo, like, Extreme Sports, and, like, a Monster Capture Raphael. I don't know what they were going for with the toy line. To see April, like, actually, like, fighting.
Yeah.
She's not like the damsel in distress.
Yeah, she's not like in her news gear.
Yeah, I mean, it's still like the yellow, like the classic April O'Neil that we all know and love.
Yeah, so that's the 2007 movie right there in a nutshell. And like I said, I think maybe because of box office, they didn't do a follow-up to it. Instead, they waited until 2014 to give us a brand new movie. But this time, it would be brought to us from Michael Bay himself, directing but only producing the film, as the movie rights had reverted to Paramount, and they would make it on Nickelodeon's movie banner. And I remember when we first, like, we had talks about this, Jesse. I remember when they first announced that they were making this film, and there was some because of the way Michael Bay handled Transformers, and certainly those sequels were very divisive for a lot of Transformers fans. So when we first heard that he was doing this, there was already a lot of things to kind of like dampen our expectations. The fact that at one point they said that the Turtles were going to be from an alien world, and everybody lost their mind on that. Fortunately, they played that down completely. Then there was the choice of Megan Fox as April O'Neil because she made amends with Bay after some disparaging comments that she made years earlier. And that freaked everybody out. Like, oh, now they're going to sex up April O'Neil. Why can't they get, like, a real actress? There were a lot of other things that people were kind of worried about. And then they started shooting the movie. We were seeing test footage and pictures, but not a lot of, like, what the Turtles were actually going to look like. We just knew that they were going to be done motion capture, which was fine. I mean, that's what we're working with in today's world of cinema. And then, before they even showed the trailers, I found a picture online for an actual Halloween costume, and it was a Michelangelo costume from the movie. And I just remember right away, like, I sent to you, like, oh no, this is going to be a disaster. They're giving these guys clothes, they're giving them chains, their faces look too human-like. Like, what the hell is going on here? And then finally they put out the trailer where again, like the original movie, they try to play up the mystery of who are these guys, what are turtles going to look like, and then you finally see him. You see Michelangelo. He takes off the bandana, and everybody on the internet lost their minds with the nostrils and the eyes and the mouths. It was like, what the hell are they doing? This movie is already a freaking disaster. So already at that point, me and my buddies, Marcos didn't go with me. My friends Adam and Craig, we all decided we're going to go pay to see this movie. And if it's bad, we're going to give it a shitty review on Coast Blog. And we came out of it actually feeling like, you know what, I had fun. It wasn't the greatest movie in the world. There were some things that, were questionable. Maybe Shredder was a little too Transformers-like. Splinter was too scary looking. But they got the personalities correct. And as long as the Turtles were the Turtles, you can have a good time with any of these movies, no matter how good or how bad they are. So I actually did leave this one saying, okay, I kind of want a sequel to this, which we'll talk a little bit about. And yeah, I mean, that was the Turtle 14 movie, and it kind of like, it brought me back for a day or two before the reality sort of settled in. And there was a whole line of figures for that I know sold pretty well. Jesse, what were your thoughts on the 2014 movie?
So, like you said, we had been discussing what little bit that we had seen before the movie had actually came out, and already kind of skeptical going into it. But obviously, like you said, the blueprint is there. Like, you have the Turtles, they have their personalities. Like, how can you really mess it up? The only thing with this one is, like, it gave, like, because we're older now, so, like, it gives you that nostalgic feeling, like, that you're a kid again, watching all your favorite characters on the big screen again. Yeah, it kind of took a minute to grow on me, but, I mean, like, the new designs and everything, but I feel now like I enjoy them. Like, I have no gripe whatsoever. Like, there's the scene in the movie when they're beatboxing in the elevator. Like, that's just a great scene in the movie. Like, it gave me a good feeling. The Megan Fox thing, like, she's nice to look at, so, I mean, I'm not mad at it. I would say the best thing beside, like, we're going to discuss the toy line, but the best thing I think that came out of the Ninja Turtles 2014 was that they came out with their own specialty pizzas at Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
And I had to go find a Pizza Hut in New Jersey, and me and my wife and kids ordered all 4 pies, and we split them, and we tasted each one of them.
Yeah,
And I think Crush came out with soda for each turtle that year as well.
That's right. Yeah, they're all in like different flavors.
Yeah, like when that movie came out, like it brought me back so much. Like I went like nostalgia crazy that I started trying to collect things, the soda and this and that. Just like I didn't really buy the toys so much, but like just trying those pizzas and everything, like it brought me back to like a good place.
Yeah, I just love that stuff, and especially that first movie was the reason why I started going to Pizza Hut. I remember when they had the videotape come out and they had the coupon to go along with it. The next thing you know, me and my parents were going to Pizza Hut maybe like once a month or something just because of Turtles. And yeah, I mean, all that stuff definitely came back into play, which the one thing I appreciated about that reboot was recapturing that feeling of being a kid and seeing the movie for the first time. But now, with the new audience and, guys like you. And,
100%.
Yeah, guys like you and others who brought their kids to have that same feeling. It was wonderful. So we did get a whole bunch of figures, again, by Playmates. And there's really not too much I could say, but I think, in the movie, they really made the turtles look very bulky and almost like they were, pro wrestlers. My complaint with these figures, I feel like they made them a little too skinny. I mean, the Raphael looks pretty badass, I will say that, but the others just look either too small or too thin, and they don't feel turtle-like to me. And that's going beyond like the designs and the decisions that they made to give them these outfits and different assortments of accessories and jewelry and all this other weird stuff. We got a Raphael with a trench coat, which was pretty cool. It's almost like a throwback to even the Raphael from the first movie to have him have that. You got an April to try to look like Megan Fox, but really she I think the figure captures more of the essence of Megan Fox, kind of this stuck-up actress, than the April O'Neil that we all know. Splinter just looks crazy, and again, way too creepy of a design that they decided to go for here. The Shredder looks pretty badass. That looks actually a lot like the Super Shredder from the first, and it's height appropriate, but a little too transformery as it was in the film. And the Foot Clan are basically like they're a bunch of SWAT team guys, and I don't mind that at all. It's certainly an update what they had in the first movie with a bunch of guys wearing socks over their heads, which I still prefer, but for what they were here, they didn't do a bad job.
Yeah, so if I remember correct, I'm pretty sure that the toys were released before the movie came. Maybe like a couple of weeks, maybe remember. But the Raphael appears in the movie. That was the throwback to, the 90s movie.
Yeah, we also got like some giant-sized figures as well that also were basically the same ones from the film. So that was almost like another throwback to classic Turtles right there.
One of the cool things about the L from this 2014 movie, I guess you could say thank you to the Next Mutation, is that they kept his like do-rag kind of look.
Yeah.
Because even in the Rise of the Ninja Turtles, which they have now, the cartoon, Raphael still wears the do-rag in that show.
Interesting. Yeah, so I guess we'll jump into the
And he's the leader.
That's right. I guess we'll jump into the sequel, Out of the Shadows, which came out 2 years later. And I guess you could say what happened here was that I think people saw the first film initially and they were in the nostalgia of it and enjoyed the movie for what it was. But with the second movie, something happened. Something happened where I think, on one hand, I remember when we saw the trailer on the Super Bowl and they showed Bebop, Rocksteady, and Krang, and I was actually hyped up. Like, hey, we're finally getting all the characters that we never got in the older movies. So this should be a pretty kick-ass film. But something happened, I think, where people may have went back on second viewings of the first film and realized they didn't like it as much as they did, because for whatever reason, when this came out, look, 2016 was a weird year and there were a lot of movies that didn't perform well, but this was one of the biggest bombs of 2016, despite everything that they got. And Jesse, you could probably help me with this. I mean, I remember seeing it and thinking, it's not bad, but maybe was it the fact that the ending felt like it was just the ending of the first movie, but recycled, like switching Shredder with Krang? Was Shredder not portrayed well? Was Stephen Amell falling short as Casey Jones? Because this is a movie that you've got Sheamus playing Rocksteady. I mean, it's like we got everything. The movie still didn't succeed. We even got the Terrordrome.
I'm not really sure about the logistics of like movies. That's probably better for as far as your department goes. People could be watching it illegally at that point. We're in a different time. Maybe the numbers weren't there. I didn't love Casey Jones in this movie. I don't know if it was because he didn't have long hair. He was a cop, which was a little different. I liked the movie myself. Rocksteady and Bebop were hilarious.
I think they were the best part of the movie.
They even had a tank. They were they were riding in the tank at one point, which was awesome. Because they did that in the cartoon as well. I was a little skeptical beforehand when I had heard that Brad Garrett was doing the voice of Krang.
Right.
But I thought he did a good job. I was a little worried, but I thought the movie was good. I don't know. I really can't say why it didn't do well. I wish we were getting another one. I know we're getting a new one, but it's CGI and animated, I should say. And but Seth Rogen, I know he's part of it, so it should be funny.
Yeah, he says he wants to make them even more teenage-like, so take that for what you will. I guess they're going to be more like millennials than what we got in the Michael Bay-produced movies. We did get figures for Out of the Shadows. The Turtles, they kind of updated the designs a bit, so less of the accessories. They look a little bit bigger, but they're still kind of skinny looking in my view. They re-released a Splinter. You got Casey Jones, played by Stephen Amell, but he just looks way too skinny for my taste.
But why do you need a masked and an unmasked version?
Right,
because the mask just come off.
That's what I would think. And honestly, he looks best with the mask on than off. So I don't get what they were trying to do here, better people. They re-released April, but they just repainted her blue without the yellow jacket. And we got Bebop and Rocksteady. And the Bebop looks great. Two versions, one with pink glasses and a mohawk, one with purple. But looks dead on like what I remember in the cartoon. And the Rocksteady is also really good, too. They have Krang, which doesn't look bad, but there's still the scaling issue. The Shredder sucks. It just looks like, hey... He looks like something out of Battlestar Galactica, like one of those Cylons, but painted in black. He's too damn skinny. What is with the skinniness of these figures?
There's no excuse why Krang is the same size as the rest of the figures.
Right.
Like, Krang is the same height as...
Yeah, that's just ridiculous right there. And
even the Turtles are...
Yeah, they were probably just really lazy with this, man. And again, these two movies were giving... We got Party Wagon, we got, we got these villains, we got some version of the Technodrome. But, the execution, the figure, they even had, the chopper trikes for Bebop and Rocksteady. But they just... It fell short for some reason. I think they were just very quick to get these out.
Bebop on the bike looks pretty cool. Here's the problem with those two, the toy lines from the two latest movies. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them has Vernon.
Yeah, what's the deal with that? We need.
He was like a big part of both of those movies, especially in the second movie where he's selling bags of air. They could have sold bags of air in toy stores, and people would have probably bought it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what's the deal? Will Arnett's likeness is too expensive?
But we've only touched on the Playmates toys. Mm-hmm. There's toys from a company called 3-0 that are badass.
Oh yeah, no, these are probably the best ones for these films. I mean, they capture the look, the texture looks dead on. I mean, these look like Hot Toys from the looks of it.
Yeah, and these came out, in 2016. So, they were right there with the movie, just not from Playmates. But, they look almost like, the NECA toys. We haven't touched on that yet, but, that's the quality that they look like.
Yeah, let's talk about NECA because I feel like, for as much as we love Playmates and what they've done, certainly made my childhood, made your childhood, but companies like Zero and in this case NECA really would take Turtles to that very next level that I would have never expected. I was pretty shocked when I think it was either last year or perhaps this year when they started putting out the figures based on the original. And oh my God, I mean, they're basically, a little bit bigger than the Playmates, of course, but they look as if they took the costumes and let's say that they had to do like some special molding to scale them down to a figure size. Look like you just bought the actual costume and it's in the palm of your hand. They are unbelievably realistic, dead on accurate to the movies. They stand really well, great accessories. They all have their different shades of green. They're all pretty much like what you saw in the movie. And even when you display them, like just diorama, they look incredible. I mean, this is like something I'm almost tempted to want to buy these now and just put them in my display. They just look so amazing.
So, I know a little bit about NECA. They've actually been doing turtle stuff since like maybe 2000. Originally, they had released Behind My Head, Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
There. So they released like a 4-pack of those, but like with all the red bandanas. That was the original thing that they had released. But since we're really only discussing the movie stuff, the movie Turtles actually released about 10 years ago. I believe there was like a pack that came out. Oh no, wait. Okay, so Donatello came out first, and there was an issue with the paint job. Like they hadn't added the correct spots on his head, so they actually didn't release the rest of them, and then they re-released them individually to GameStop. It was like a GameStop exclusive thing, only because they wouldn't be in competition with Playmates, because Playmates didn't have any figures in GameStops.
Interesting.
So that was the only way that NECA could release them. But they released a 4-pack for San Diego Comic-Con, which people like hard to get. But what's interesting about the 4-pack from San Diego Comic-Con is that the packaging that it comes in is actually one of the people who worked on the toys. It's their actual VHS case that they scanned to make the packaging. Because if you look at the packaging, like you'll even see the wear and tear on the box. So if you have like a brand new sparkling box that doesn't have that wear and tear, you clearly bought a fake one.
Yeah, I mean that VHS box is so iconic. So just to even get that kind of detail, I mean that tells you something. That's nostalgia right there. And
like these figures, like they're gorgeous. Obviously, they look like they're right out of the '90s movie. Even as of this recording, we might be getting April O'Neil from this, and I think maybe a couple of months ago, they had just released like a Loot Crate exclusive of the Spirit of Splinter when, the turtles are sitting at the fire and they're meditating, and you see Blue Splinter. So that, we're still getting figures from this, 90s movie.
Yeah, I mean, and they've done an amazing job with, they made Casey Jones, they made a regular Shredder, they made the Foot Clan, so we could maybe even get a Keno figure down the line. I mean, they're really, like, taking it seriously to the point of saying, okay, we didn't get these toys when we were kids, Now we're going to give them to you because we know that this movie is just still holding up to this day. I mean, even when I saw
They
it,
even released the baby turtles from when the ooze falls on
yeah,
them,
I saw
like that
that.
in between phase. Yeah, so even like that is pretty cool too. We definitely do need a Kino though, with like a couple of pizzas, maybe the little scooter that he rides.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's just kind of where we could start wrapping up here, but it just everything seems to fall back to those original movies. Like even when I saw the reboot, there was still that part of me that said, as much as I kind of enjoyed the 2 hours I had with this film, even if it had issues, part of me still missed those Jim Henson designs and just the feeling that I had when I saw that original movie with my parents. But the fact that we're coming back into this now, and like I said, these figures, that video game footage you showed me with the music playing, I mean, there's something about that movie that stands the test of time. And obviously the cartoon in itself is still all part of our childhoods and the reason we're still into Turtles. You can't go into an arcade now without seeing, either the original Turtles arcade game or Turtles in Time and wanting to put your coins in there to play for a couple of minutes. I mean, Turtles still, no matter what, no matter how old we get, we always seem to come back to it because it just brings back this happy time. And I can't say anything against those original films, specifically the first one, because it really shows you how you can do a property that starts as a comic book or a cartoon and to do it justice on the big screen. So I mean that's certainly something that I would love to return to in another episode if we ever get Albert or the other guys here more into that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, before we wrap it up, NECA also just recently released the Toka and Razar figures from
Yeah.
the second movie, which look, obviously NECA releases those realistic looking ones. And just yesterday, they released Super Shredder, who actually looks like, Super Shredder. He's much bigger he's much bigger and he has like the cool blades on his armor and stuff. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, but like Ninja Turtles is timeless. Probably 20 years from now, my kids and your kids might be doing a podcast together about whatever their versions of the Turtles were. You never know.
Yeah, we keep getting different versions, and this is another last thought that I wanted to say, and maybe you could put some thoughts on it. But I was thinking the other day as I was preparing for this podcast about the Turtles Forever special, where they took the 1987 Turtles and they transferred into an alternate dimension where they teamed up with the 2003 Turtles, and I still think that special was excellent. Even the third act when they bring in the comic book Turtles to team up, I thought that was some of the most creative writing and animation that I've seen for an animated special of any kind. And again, it's like every time you think you could step away from Turtles, there's always that little something that brings you back. So it gave me this idea, which I don't think Hollywood will ever do, but I think it would be wonderful if they were able to pull it off. If they could do that premise again, but have the 1990 Turtles cross over into the 2014 Turtles. I know that's probably an impossibility since they're trying to reboot it again, but I think there would be some serious money to bridge the two generations together right there.
Well, I think that's what the general premise was for the special that you're referring to, is that someone like us who sees the 80s version of the cartoon, and then, like, let's say my kid is watching their version of the, 2007 version, all it is just introducing other generations to these versions of Turtles that they might not have seen. So it's like, oh, maybe I'll check this out now. Maybe I'll go buy the DVDs or, the merchandise. Maybe I'll go on eBay and get the merchandise from that series now. I know we didn't talk about it at all here because we're really discussing the movies, but like NECA even just released the Turtles from their musical tour.
Yeah.
And like that, like, you know, we talk about like the Next Mutation and Turtles in Time, like their costumes. Like, what about those costumes though? Like, I don't know.
I was so shocked that they did figures for that. I remember seeing that show as a kid. Me, my cousin, and my aunt all went to Radio City Music Hall, and I can never forget that night where it was like literally the Turtles, like they were in the movie, just coming to life. You got April O'Neil singing a musical piece. You got Shredder saying he's got the whole building on lockdown. You believe that Shredder took over Radio City Music Hall. And to me, that may have been the height of my Turtles craze, because after those two movies, to kind of like almost feel like now they're really life, you know, like this is real now. I can never forget that, and I really, again, I tip my hat off to NECA for even making that possible, and it just makes me think they got a whole lot of other ideas that they got coming, but what I think has kept Turtles popular all through time is just the personalities. As long as you keep the personalities of those Turtles the same, or even if you do little touches here and there, if they're still engaging enough, it's like any generation can get into it. And that says something about its longevity.
Yeah, I'll probably be 60 years old and still talking about Ninja Turtles. Like, I have a Ninja Turtle tattoo. I'm planning on getting another one. I actually just acquired Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters and Hyperstone Heist for Sega.
Nice.
About maybe 3 days ago. So there is a game on the computer you can download for free. It's called Ninja Turtles Rescue Palooza. I definitely recommend it because, like, the nostalgia that it brings, you just have to check it out for yourself. But as like a Turtle fan like you are, I know you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I even played the arcade game based on the Nickelodeon game at the Chinatown Fair with my cousin, and that was fun too. That really also had a throwback to the old school arcade game. And one thing I will say, I mean, obviously we could talk all day about the video games here, but the freaking water level, I could see NECA trying to make a water level toy in the near future.
I mean, that would be a dope, like, thing to display.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever seen those shadow boxes?
Yes.
Like, that'd be pretty awesome to have.
Yeah, so I think we got to do another one of these, Jesse, because I feel like we talked about the movies. I think we definitely need to get back into the cartoon because they're just such fun to talk about and to reminisce.
I mean, I have the whole box set right next to me.
Yeah.
I got all the video games here too.
Video games, the old VHS tapes. I could go on and on.
Actually,
The PSAs. Yeah.
I just recently got this, the latest Funko Pop. I know you know I collect Funkos.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, check this out.
Nice.
It's he's got a surfboard in there. It's a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive.
Yeah, so we're going to wrap this up, guys. This is the Silver Screen Action Figure Podcast. As always, you can follow us by liking us on Facebook, us on Twitter, Silver Screen AF Pod. And if you email me with questions, comments, suggestions for future episodes, email me at silverscreenafpodcast@gmail.com. Or it's on Facebook if you want to look at it. And that's basically about it. So we're definitely going to pick this up again, and maybe Albert and the guys can join in. And safe, and we will see you back in the movies when things are done.